to everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to be here today, not just to be here on earth today, but to be here and to present to you an amazing story. Here we go. No, I'm just waiting for the broadcast to appear on here so I can also share it. And maybe you'd like to share this as well, because we all know that stories change lives. We all love a good story. Let me share it here. Let me share it every single possible place I can share it, because like I say, I think this is something that everybody personally needs to hear, because stories change lives, and your life is a story, and that life that is your story could seriously change a lot of people's lives. And today we're talking about this man here, Mr. Ernest Shackleton. And this is someone who I'd heard the name. Have you ever heard of this name? Because it's only because I'm writing a book now with a colleague of mine all about leadership, and it's called Inspirators. And Inspirators is all about leaders who inspire others to follow. But my perception and my take on leadership is everyone is a leader. People often think leaders are people who take over countries and people who are heads of teams and organizations, and that's right. But I think we're all leaders, right? Every single day we wake up and we lead ourselves in a particular direction. But most people don't lead themselves in a direction where they're inspired and they're fired up. And so I'm delighted to be here today and share with you the story of this man, because this man's story is crazy. You couldn't make it up. And in writing this book, I've been thinking, who are great leaders who even to this day we could look back and learn from them? With the coaching that we're doing with our coaching community, it's all about willpower. So when we look at willpower, willpower really is the science of success. It is the queen of all virtues. It is the master aptitude, the will to do what others don't do, the will to overcome adversity, the will to find a way when sometimes we don't think there is a way. And I don't know about you, but I probably know a few things about you. I know that there's a gap, right? There's a gap, right, between where you are today and where you want to be. I bet you are not where you want to be with your health, with your finances, and your relationships. You're just not where you want to be. There are things in your life that you do want to achieve. But the difference that will make the difference in whether you achieve those things is willpower. It is the science of self-control. And when we look at who has great will, this man had a ridiculous and I think we're all explorers. All of us are explorers. There is an explorer in you. When you're a child, think about it. What did you want to do? You wanted to explore. Life was an adventure. You wanted to pick things up, pull them apart. That's all you wanted to do. Does this make sense to everyone? Is everyone here with me? Show me some hearts if you can hear me. Tell me, do you see yourself as a leader? Could you see yourself as a leader? And before we really get stuck into this incredible story, my goal in sharing this with you is that by the end, you understand some really key things that he did, some key things that he did that you can do. I'm not here to tell you and just to talk about him so you think, oh, that's an interesting story. I'm here to tell you his story so you might apply some of his story to your story. And maybe you'll go away and you'll go and learn more about him, because we live in an age where we can access information like we never could before. And this was something that he wasn't able to do, as I'm about to explain. So Ernest Shackleton was an explorer, and he decided to do things which other people hadn't done. So most things on Earth now have been done. And man has this innate drive to grow, to get better. We are engineered to grow. We are engineered to achieve goals and dreams and ambitions. We are what the Greeks call teleological. We need things to work towards. But so many of us don't work towards things. And his greatness as an explorer was forged in crisis. And this is a really important word, crisis. I want you to think about this word and what does it mean? Crisis. In fact, for the Japanese, the word crisis has two symbols. One means danger and the other means opportunity. And have you ever experienced a crisis? Well, it depends what you describe as a crisis. But his greatness was forged in a crisis. And this is what's happened to most of us. My greatness most definitely has been formed in the crisis that I have faced in my life. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about you. So he decided to get a group of men, 27, with him 28, and to get on a boat called the Endurance and sail all the way down South America to the Antarctica, and with those guys, literally just walk across the Antarctic. I mean, whose idea was that? Would you want to do that? I think I'd probably go, that's a little bit cold. I'd rather not. But they decided to do it, and he raised a lot of money. But he was very much into his ego as well. If you look at the history, it was very interesting because he had a bit of an ego and he wanted to show the world, look what I'm capable of doing. I'm a man I'm taking the, look, I did it first. I'm the first. And he didn't think very clearly about what he was going to do. He was advised about the timing of what he was going to do. People told him, look, there's pack ice down there that could literally take the boat and encapsulate the boat so the boat won't be able to move. But no, he knew better. I've got a great group of men. We've got a brilliant boat. The boat's called the Endurance. Let's go. So they went down. And what happened? They got stuck in ice. Have you ever been stuck in ice? I mean, really stuck in ice, because Mother Nature is actually quite powerful. And literally, they got stuck in ice in December 1914, not just for a month, not for a couple of months, but for a very long time, thinking that they might be able to get out. They got 400 yards at one point because they started drifting with the ice that had locked them in. And you think, wow, what's happening here? Now, he was an inspirational leader because he kept the morale of the people, of the 27 other people. He kept their spirits high. He realized that he was in a real difficult situation, and he had to keep this alive. He actually felt responsible for all of these people. It was like the becoming of him. It was less about him getting the adulation of being this great explorer. It was more about getting these people home alive. That is what he wanted. That is what he wrote down. He had a reason for getting up every single day. What is your reason for getting up every single day? Do you have things that are firing you up? What's wildly important in your life right now? What's sad in some ways is because it was the crisis that forged him. My challenge to all of you is, okay, if you do face a crisis, maybe you'll take something away from what I'm going to share with you that will inspire you. But what about if you had something to work towards that also fired you up? Because most of us don't do that. And when we do, if we fail and it doesn't work out, what do? We give up. Is this inspiring you? Are you getting something from this? Could you start to see Ernest Shackleton in you? Because if he was alive and well today, I'm sure he'd say, go after your goals and your dreams and your ambitions. So basically, after 10 months or so, they realized the boat basically had been turned over. They had to abandon ship. There's loads of water coming into the boat. So they had 3 little lifeboats, or 3 little small boats, 23-foot boats. And they started dragging these boats under his orders across the ice to somewhere else where they were going to potentially set sail. But there was almost a mutiny, and he had to change his plans, which is another key thing in life. If things aren't working the way you want to, we have to be flexible enough to change our plans. So they basically then ended up staying put for about 10 months. Can you imagine this? Living on ice for 10 months, not being on land? Now, eventually, the ice started to break up. So they got on these boats and they decided to go to a place that was called Elephant Island. Elephant Island, crazy conditions in getting there, huge waves in these 3 little boats. I think 17 days, they finally came to Elephant Island. It was a barren place. There was no one there. And they then had to stay there for a while. But all the time, his will was to get these guys home. Now in life, for us, for everyday people, it is so easy to give up. It's too easy. It is so easy, isn't it? Do you think he could have given up? What difference would it make to your life if you just couldn't give up? I know a few people like that. People are like, no, I don't know. One of them's actually operating the camera here, Jerry. I often hear him saying, I can't give up. There is no giving up. But there is no giving up when you decide that there is no giving up. So on Elephant Island, he then decided that he'd leave 21 of the people there, or 22, and 5 of them, including himself, would go on a boat to go to South Georgia, which is another island, where he knew that there would be some people there. So he set sail on his little boat, 17 days in the most treacherous, the most challenging sailing conditions in the world. I mean, 50-foot waves. And basically got to the other side of this island. If they hadn't, they would have died. And then they had to leave. He left 3 people there because they were so gone, basically exhausted. And then him and 2 others then went over this ridiculous conditions of mountains and glaciers to finally get 3 days of no sleep. And they tied themselves together with a rope, arrived at this place where there was like a whaling center where there were people, and he finally made it. But of course, he still had 22 people on that island, 22 people. And you know what? It took him 3 months, I think, and 4 or 5 attempts to get there, And he finally did on the 4th attempt. And guess what? All of the men were still alive. All of them. After 2 years. I would really encourage you to look at this story and understand, why do we like stories like this? We love stories like this because they talk to us. They touch something inside us. That's why we read books, go to the cinema. It's innate. It's your life is a story, right? You know that, I know that. But we settle for watching other people's stories and being inspired by them and never really creating a great story of our own life. What do you want the legacy of your life to be? You know what the greatest thing about him is, which I love? He never actually achieved his goal. He never achieved his goal, but it wasn't about the goal. It was about the journey and who they all became. And he had some huge challenges on that journey. He had financial worries because he thought, how the hell am I going to pay all of these people? He also, there were obviously issues around the supplies and his own ego. He had to get his ego out of the way because he knew these people's lives were far more important. So what lessons can we learn from Mr. Ernest Shackleton? And by the way, when he was rescued, it was in the middle of the First World War, people just forgot about him. They forgot about him. They weren't interested in explorers. It wasn't important. The whole world was at war. Millions of people were dying. But, a few years later, after the war, Captain Scott, I can't remember his first name. Please excuse me. He got the adulation of, also the explorer. And it wasn't until the 60s and 70s, 1960s and 70s, where people started to talk about this man and what he had actually done. And I think we should look to people like that as almost heroes. So what can we learn from Mr. Ernest Shackleton? By the way, just in a quick aside, here's an advert for zero sugar Coca-Cola. If you've got it, don't drink it. It's like battery acid. If you've got a blackboard and you want to clean that blackboard, make sure you get some Coke Zero. Look at this. It's as good as new. Yeah. Coke Zero. It's so good, I bought the company. Look at that. So what could we learn from him? I'm only going to take a few more moments of your time because it's not a complicated list. You don't have to go to university to learn what I'm about to share with you. So what made him, I've just got some of my notes here. What made him so amazing? Well, one thing was he was incredibly flexible. Whoops. Flexible. I don't just mean physically flexible, which is also very important, but he had massive flexibility in his realizing that if something wasn't working, he had to change ways. Most of us are so set in our ways, we think there's only one way, and we find it very hard to let go of what we don't need. So that was one key thing about him. What I loved about him, he fell forwards. He didn't look back. It wasn't that he didn't review maybe some of the mistakes, but he fell forwards. So people fall backwards, and then oh, that was really hard. He didn't look back. He didn't worry. He was always looking forwards. What can be done? And imagine if you had that attitude in your life, that when people presented you with problems or you had a challenge in your life, that you learned from it and you kept moving forwards. What I loved also about him, he had incredible emotional control. And because we know a lot of this, because there were videographers, he had a photographer, he had emotional control, but he was human. He had self-doubt. He really doubted himself at times, but despite that doubt, he wasn't superhuman. He was a human just like you. But with that emotional control, he actually kept a journal. He wrote a lot of this stuff down. And I believe journaling is something that we should all do. Life, if it's worth living, it has to be worth recording. Maybe someday, maybe someone will know about your story and what you did and be inspired by that. What else did he do? He took full responsibility. I love this, response. I love this word, actually. Responsibility, responding with the ability that you have. Responsibility. I have no idea if that's correct, but who cares? I'm dyslexic, KO. You know what I mean? To take full responsibility. Imagine if we taught this stuff in school to people rather than teaching them about spelling. We don't need to spell. Just ask Siri. He'll tell you. Hey Siri, how do you spell responsibility?
Responsibility. R-E-S-P-O-N-S-I-B-I-L-I-T-Y.
Thanks, Siri. See, you don't need knowledge. Even though knowledge is powerful, what you need is action, right? You need to take action. You need to develop willpower. And that's what he had. He had an abundance of willpower faced with death. He could have been so easy just to give up. But he had a big reason. His big reason was obviously he didn't want people to die. And that's great. But what I would say to all of us is we need to think forwards. We need to fall forwards and dare to dream. And maybe from you watching this broadcast this morning, maybe you'll be challenged. Maybe you'll be excited to do something. So already, before we wrap this up, what's your biggest takeaway? Can you not see the Ernest Shackleton in you? What else was brilliant about him? He was humane. He had huge amounts of humanity that he gave to other people. He was forged in crisis. He became who he became through a crisis, and we can all do that as well. What else? I think that's really it. I mean, there's probably loads of things that he did, but he had the willing to pursue any avenue. Let me ask you this question, my dear friends, wherever you are. Could you do this? Could you take responsibility? Could you be more flexible in yourself and with others? Could you fall forwards when things don't work out? Could you learn from situations? Could you have more emotional control? So if you feel emotion that isn't useful to you, you could change your emotion. Could you give more humanity, not just to others, but more importantly to yourself, to show yourself self-compassion? Could you deal with a crisis better? Of course you could. What do you need in all of this to happen? Well, probably won't surprise you, but this might help you. Can we see this, Jerry?
Yeah.
You might need coaching. I don't know about you, but I believe everybody needs coaching. The role of a coach is quite simple. Take someone from A and get them to B. Now, maybe I'm already coaching you, and that's great, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. I really do. I've spent my life being an explorer as to what works. What do people need to learn in terms of leadership, in terms of confidence and breaking habits and developing all of these? In fact, any of you who I have been coaching or have coached it some way in some way, shape or form in your life, feel free right now to say that in a few words. What has my coaching actually done for you? This is a sales pitch, by the way, but it will only last for a couple of minutes. But it's not really a sales pitch. It's actually a calling saying, hey, excuse me, do you want to achieve anything in your life? Do you want to stop surviving and start to thrive and bring your greatest gifts to the world? So you leave the world in a better place and people remember your name. I want people to remember me. I want to have a mark. I want this day to have touched your life in some way so that when you go out today and doing what you do, your life is better because of this time that we shared together this morning. I can't thank you enough for giving me your time. You know, it's August. I'm sure there's 100 other things that you can be doing right now. But what we could do is live in the memory of this great man, even just for a few moments, and think, thank you, Mr. Ernest Shackleton, for doing something incredible and being so heroic. And by the way, the word heroic, he was a true hero, and I'll tell you why. The Greeks, the word heros is a Greek word meaning the protector. So a great hero isn't going out necessarily and showing all others how great they are. The hero is the protector of others. And that is why we should hold him in such high regard, because he saved the lives of people where without that great leader, those people probably would have perished. There has never been a more important time for great leadership. When certain people can get into power, wherever that might be, whether it's America or Africa, wherever, a lot of people, the United Kingdom, and they get into power and we think, what are they actually doing? I have no idea, because I'm not that interested. I'm more interested in you and you becoming the Ernest Shackleton of your own life, being an explorer and developing this in yourself. This is not a joke. This is a call. This is a call. Pete Cohen is calling you out and saying, what are you going to do with your life? Now, I didn't like that question when I was a kid. But what about now? What are you going to do with your life? What could you do with your life if you put your mind to it? I really appreciate everyone showing up here this morning. Who feels inspired? Show me some hearts, show me some love. What's your biggest takeaway from today? I have to thank Jerry for coming on the camera here this morning and helping me out. It's great to see so many of you. I was about to pick up this Diet Coke as opposed to picking up this Thank you so much for all these wonderful comments. I really appreciate it. I found inner peace, got promoted, lost weight, have a wealth plan, and know when I'll be financially free. I'm starting a master's in life coaching. Listen, this is what it's all about for me. Amazing people. Your coaching supports me to be my best and help me inspire others. Thank you. It goes on and on and on. This is a joke. Joining my 365 has given me the opportunity to step forwards in my life. As I was frozen in which way to turn, I took extreme responsibility and big action. You certainly did, my friend. We have an amazing event coming up in September 22nd. There's a link to it in this. It's the My 365 Summit. You won't just be hearing from me. You'll be hearing from an Olympic champion, Naomi Richards. You'll be hearing from Patty Dobrovolsky, who's one of the best visual thinkers in the world. Visual thinking is something that we all do. We all think visually. What does that mean? What did you have for dinner last night? What are you having for breakfast? Are you going on holiday? We think in pictures, but most of us don't know how to think in pictures in such a way that creates a fire in our belly that makes us go, I've got to do that. I appreciate you being here. What's your biggest takeaway? That's what I want to know. What's your biggest learning? And look, these are all things that you can do. You can take more responsibility. You can be more flexible. You can fall forwards. You can develop emotional control. You can be more humane to others, but especially to yourself. And you can be forged, not just in a crisis, but you can be forged in having a vision of where you want to go. Thank you so much. I love every single one of you. And I'll be here tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. for our coaching community. It's day 2 of week 3 on willpower, the science of self-control. If you haven't shared this post, please share it. I think everyone needs to hear this, even if they don't want to. That doesn't make sense. And if you're watching this on the replay, Shay, thank you very much. Namaskar. Namaskar isn't namaste. Namaskar means I salute the greatness in you. Namaskar. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow. Much love to all. I'm gone. Goodbye.